everybody out there. It's the Big Picture Manatee, and we're back with a very important episode at our 1 year anniversary mark. So, congratulations for providing some great content these last 12 months to everyone listening. And we hope you know that we try to keep these concise, to the point, but we really try to help the citizens know where to look, where to go, how to find the information, and then try to pick through some of the things that are a little bit more government speak, so to speak. So today we're going to talk about the county's budget, and the budget now has been released. And I'm Sherry Corrier. I'm a private business owner now, but I was the county administrator and a longtime county employee.
Hey everybody, I'm Misty Servia, also a private business owner and former county commissioner for Manatee, and happy to be here with you all.
Hello everyone, my name is Reggie Bellamy. I'm also a former county commissioner, District 2, and excited to be here to talk about some budget.
So we're sharing our past experience with you, so you know that we know what we're talking about when we pull this story up for the budget. And this year we're presenting to you the breakdown, in the Manatee County budget for 2025 is over $1.2 million in net, which is about a little over $1.2 billion. Sorry, Reggie, I saw you catch me on that. Thank you. $1.2 billion net, and at $2.3 billion gross. And so what that does in the gross budget, it includes funding for all of the services as well as your internal services and the reserve. So that's going to be important when we talk about these different elements of the budget. And what just happened was the county administrator has just delivered this budget to the actually 6 commissioners, because there are only 6 right now. District 1, the district I live in, has no district representation. We just have to rely on the 2 at-large commissioners and the rest to make sure that the fastest growing area of the community is covered in the budget. So with that, let's dive right in.
Yeah, and when you have a budget that large, you're going to have some challenges, right? You're going to face some challenges with employee recruitment, retention, compensation, inflation costs, and fluctuating interest rates, affordable housing and labor shortages across all sectors, and completing projects on time, not to mention these high demand for services as people roll into town, 10,000 new residents a year. So the county administrator's role is to present a balanced budget, and commissioners have the role of reviewing the budget. And then they make the final decisions before it's adopted in September. But remember, this is just a project, because right now, the property appraiser has given their estimate on the property tax rate for this year, but the tax roll won't be officially certified until mid-July. And that's when we will formally know what is the deal. Is it an increase? Is it a decrease? And how much money will we really have to spend?
And it's a lot going on. It looks like this year there are 21 new positions within the 14 county departments. And I just want to make sure that this breakdown is out there. So I'm going to go through it, colleagues, if you all don't mind. 1 in community and veteran services, and this is as far as the new positions that are coming. 2 in convention and visitor bureau. Congratulations on everything that our Fred Elliott does over there. 2 in property management. 9 in public safety, 3 in public works, and 1 in sports and leisure, and 3 in utilities. A $12.8 million increase to the workforce for salary increases. Phase 1 for cost of living adjustments, and phase of longevity. We didn't see any further explanation about how this will be broken down at this point, and I'm sure that as things take place, it'll move forward. Also, there's a proposed 1% increase to both employer and employee health insurance premiums that's being recommended. So this is good information as of right now, but we're going to dive into it and go a little bit more in depth so we can inform the citizens of the budget and the information and how it impacts you.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the proposed increase for um, cost of living and that longevity issue there, one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is that, like in each county department, you never know when somebody's going to retire, right? You never know when they plan to retire. Lots of times people make those decisions. They're personal, it's based on their own situation. And so each department has to be able to cover the cost of a retirement. And if somebody's got a lot of payout, that impacts the budget overall. So I think later we see that's why some of the reserves for salaries also includes money that has to be used for that kind of stuff. So I wanted to just mention, and not that people don't know this, but it's an election year. And as you guys know, when that happens, there's always this talk about let's reduce the millage rate. You know, let's bring it down. Let's give everybody a break. And we're always for that. But there is so much involved in being able to manage the new growth and try to provide a break. So, in this year's budget, it's presented as a possibility, and it shows some scenarios. So it shows a scenario if you reduce the budget by 0.05 mils to 20 to 0.20 mils, what's the impact? So we really don't know for sure, but the lowest reduction might be around $17.50 if they did the 0.05 mils, and it could be as high as $70 if they did the 0.20 mils. If they do something different, that'll also be presented. And as we work through that budget, and we find out what's really available to the board, then you're going to probably hear about that mid first part of August before we get to the public hearings. So what do you guys think about that? You have those kinds of challenges when you were commissioners.
I got to tell you, it sounds good to reduce taxes. I'm always about that too. I'm a taxpayer. I don't like paying high taxes. I don't want huge government that doesn't work efficiently. But there's 10,000 people moving here a year. And it has been proven that just that property tax increase is not going to pay for everything that's needed, especially if we keep reducing it. So, and not all those people are going to be property owners either. I don't know. It's risky, in my opinion. I like to keep things flat, build up our savings, which we'll talk about later. That's been reduced tremendously because save for a rainy day. I mean, there are going to be times when we need money, and you don't want to have to ask boards in the future or citizens in the future that there's an emergency. Hey, we got to jack up the taxes now big time because we didn't do what we should have done, or they didn't do it 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, my thoughts on it is, we have a conservative board, and, and with the growth, there definitely will be some challenges. But I'll piggyback on what you said. Their infrastructure concerns. There are a lot of different areas out there that's going to be needed. Financial attention. I'll just put it at that point. So as the budget flows, or the preparation for the budget flows, the challenges are going to be very, very interesting on how they handle them and how we move forward with them. But this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, I heard the county administrator say that there were 150-ish requests for desired units, meaning positions. And Reggie, you just mentioned that the recommendation was 21. So there's a lot of recognition by the departments about what's needed to manage the growth, but then there's a balance, right? That you have to go through based on what you got. And so these 21, were basically deemed to be the most important at this current time.
That's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about, go ahead, Misty, I apologize.
Oh, no, go, please, sir.
I'm just thinking about, when we were county commissioners, and we always got criticized for the reserves, and I'm not necessarily sure where we are with reserves. You spoke earlier, Misty, about that preparing for a rainy day. We have reserve contingencies that could not exceed 10% of the total appropriation and reserves cash balance. It can't be more than 20% of the appropriations, but can be used to pay expenses until the next tax revenues are collected. Reserve for contingency, I think currently now is $57.3 million. And for things like transportation, parks and recreation, and we just had that groundbreaking on the new Civic Center project with the Palmetto Marriott. Reserves for salaries is like 18.8 million. Reserves for cash balance is 646 million. And reserves for the capital is 119 million. And the total is 841.3 million in reserves as of right now, I think, if I'm speaking that correctly.
Yeah.
Hey, Sherry, when you were county administrator, what were the recommended reserves just to keep operations going as they are, just to keep, the garbage picked up and the water and sewer flowing and the lift stations maintained and all those basic things that county government does?
Yeah, so basic standard is to have about 2 months worth of operating funds available immediately. We actually tried to have more, and I'll tell you why, because we have experienced our share of disasters over the last 20 years, and some of them pretty significant in places where infrastructure was extremely important for there's a lot of population. So having that reserve at about 4 to 6 months was always something while you guys were commissioners and the people that preceded you or that were in there tried to have, because there wasn't the ability to really access a lot of other money. And so that's what we tried to do, and it seemed to work for us in a couple instances, especially during Hurricane Irma, when, as I mentioned, there was so much damage. We were able to cover that a little over $11 million. And then we didn't get that back until about a year and a half later from the federal government through FEMA. So there's a lot of positives to being prepared to help your citizens, and you never know where that's going to be.
One of the first things I learned from you, being a county commissioner, is that you better have cash on hand when there is a storm for debris removal, because those trucks are coming to remove debris. And if you have cash, you're golden, and they will come do the work for you. And if you don't, they're going to go right past you and keep heading south down to Miami or whoever has the money. So you need that money, and it better be right away cash. So yeah, I'll never forget that.
I just think about the show me the money uh, with Jerry Maguire, and it's so important. But I understand it from the service workers. They don't want to do the service and then have to work. Those another 20 or 30 days without receiving their money. I understand that, but that's why I think the reserves were so important. And I'm not necessarily sure if that mindset is out there at this particular point in time. But that's why we're going to continue to discuss it and see where we are.
Well, and the crazy thing, Reggie, is that the county is expected to be a bank, just like Sherry said. I mean, you put that money out, right? And then, sure, you get reimbursed by the federal government a year and a half later.
Exactly.
So no interest, no, I mean, that's a lot of money to be banking, and you better have it up front. Can you imagine running your personal life that way? Anyway, or your business? It's different in government, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So here's some good news, guys. So our bond rating remains strong with Moody's and Fitch. We're still at a AAA, and that's a great thing. because that keeps the county's debt service payments at a better rate, at one of the best rates. And currently, we have a lot of debt, you guys. So our payments stand right now at $35.2 million, and that's excluding the environmental lands debt. A new debt service plan was presented to this board, and they've certainly been pushing the limit on borrowing money to the point and speed at which you can actually build projects. It's very difficult. You can say one thing about we want to build these projects and go borrow the money, but actually getting the people in place to do the work, that's a whole nother challenge. And they haven't been able to do that quite right. But the interest is still ticking on all that money borrowed. So yeah, and we have a debt service and we got to keep up with that. So what are the things that could impact this budget? I want to think about that. Federal rate cuts may not happen until September, if at all. Maybe they
Yeah,
will.
if at all is for sure, right? It missed the mark so far just about every month for the last year.
I mean, the last I listen to news all the time, and the last I heard is there aren't going to be any right now.
Yeah, no.
That's going to happen definitely in September. Good thing is the labor market's holding its own here in the state of Florida, and that's great. But hey, things change on a dime. Did we not learn that during COVID? Wow, did we learn that, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So one of the things that I'm thinking about, and maybe a little off the script here, but with the debt that we know that we have, you know, Sarah, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here because I know you've actually gone through this before, but just understanding the debt where we are right now, how complicated is it to prepare for the budget with that debt being out there?
Well, right now, and varied through the years, but the county's got about 6 advisors that help, that are outside contracted advisors that help with some of what Misty said, with watching the bond market and then also how those other impacts are there. And everybody's different. Everybody's saying when this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But honestly, I think the financial management department's job is such to really protect as much as possible the county budget. And so, they keep an eye on that. There was a request for a position in the county budget that was not funded at this time yet, to be that like person that just manages and watches the debt. Now, right now, Sheila McLean, who's the CFO, does that and manages all the other aspects of the entire financial management department and all the 12 and all the 14 departments. So it's tough. But what has transpired this year, Reggie, is there's a new plan for paying debt service down. That's that 30-year payout. And the way it's projected is it looks pretty good that, we'll be able to do it. It's a lot of money every year, though, to pay that. It's about $35 million a year, 35.2 million to be exact, without the environmental lands tax in there to pay that debt service off. And so all those factors that Misty mentioned to everybody needs to know, those are important because it impacts the availability of money within the county budget to pay that debt service off. So you can see it, you can feel it in the CFO's presentations that's a heavy lift, a huge responsibility, probably keeps them up at night. But they've done a good job of trying to present something that if all the factors go the way they are, we can manage it this year. But every year is a new year.
Every year's a new year. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Well, one more. The other thing is you budget it, you plan it, and then I mean, hell, we had to go through COVID, right? Where everything stopped, and we definitely don't want another COVID. And I think here recently we just had a hurricane preparedness as we do the budget, as we prepare, that's one of the things that I always wanted to be mindful of. How do we make sure that we support in tough times? And I'm not sure. I'm not saying they're not, but I'm not sure that is a priority right now.
Right. I mean, I hate to relive, but March 16th, 2020, our lives in Manatee County as commissioners, county administrators, and county employees and citizens of the county changed, stopped out on a dime. We shut down, we sent everybody home that day, and we stepped back and said, wow, we don't know what this is. We don't know how long it's lasting. We got a plan for it. And we went into resiliency mode. And I'm super proud of everyone involved in that time period. I don't think anybody that's in the commission seat right now have any idea what that was like for you guys, what it was like for the staff and for the citizens to have to struggle through COVID, which those battles lasted for a good year and a half more. So you're right. Anything can happen at any time. And that's what's important about good leadership, is that they're able to know what the base requirements are. We talked about this before. There's a base level of service that you have to have. That's a minimum requirement, and Manatee County has that. And then there's what we're doing right now, which is a little bit above that for the citizens that need that. That's more parks, that's more EMS, that's more services for veterans. And then there's that look in the future for what's coming, because we statistically know, that, like you said, Missy, 10,000 and plus people a year now moving here, and you got to plan for that. So it's tough. Overcommitting to certain things without having the vendors to provide the service in a timely manner really impacts everything. So it's a challenge.
I'm really glad you said how proud you are of everyone during that time, because I feel the same. There was such extraordinary leadership at the county with you and Jake. I mean, that's what comes to my mind. You guys just continued forward to keep things on track and keep people safe, despite all the distracting chatter on the outside. People don't know that you were on calls constantly with the governor's office. What was it, every week, and sometimes more often?
Every day for the first 6 months, every day.
Every day for the first 6 months.
Every day.
Once a week.
Every day. And the department, and let's mention every department director and every staff member who immediately stepped back and said, this is what we trained for. We never think something like this was ever going to happen. And I'll never forget the health department. They've been criticized from a state level, but Dr. Bensi and her crew had to immediately step back and focus on the pandemic. And that's what everybody plans for. You plan for the worst, and so far the best has happened. But that was amazing time. And again, the county departments made it through. The collaboration with the sheriff and the collaboration with all the other law enforcement in all the other cities, it was a unique opportunity that had to be done. And while a lot of people weren't happy with the administration, a lot of people weren't happy with the commission and what you were doing, you can look back now and be proud of what you're proud of and learn from what you learned.
Well, I'll just say this, because we're talking about budget. One thing that former County Commissioner Steve Johnson would always say: ask your question, and money is the answer.
Yeah, right.
And money is the answer. As we talk about the budget, and we reflect on all the things that took place during those challenges of COVID. And now here we are, in 2024, talking about the budget and preparing in my mindset nothing against no one in any position. You know, the bandwidth is not where it was as far as the experience within workers and things, and the brain trust is a little different, and thinks a little bit different, which is why all of this is important for our citizens to be aware. We're talking budget now. Topics they need to be aware and be well informed because of their life. So the budget conversation is very, very important.
One thing I noticed that I want to share with you guys is that as I watched the comments or the presentation for the budget here this week, there's something I really noticed, and I didn't really, I'm not really excited about it, but I'm not really sure why. And so I think this is something that will come out, but there really wasn't much input from the commissioners. There weren't many questions, and maybe they're all waiting until all of the departments present their budget. But it was sort of interesting to me that it was, mostly worried about getting through the meeting as opposed to like we're really here to, ask questions, or maybe they felt like all the questions were answered. But we'll know when we come back to report after the other departments deliver their messages and after the constitutionals, come in front of the board, and then Reggie's favorite, the CIP.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
That $2.3 billion budget that we'll be doing a show on. Maybe we'll know more, but there was more emphasis on making sure nothing new got funded for the citizens, as opposed to there was an interesting discussion about the county attorney's office and that they were understaffed, and maybe some reference to that, there was more support needed because the board felt like maybe that hadn't been there in the past. So, we're going to see a few changes from what we presented to you guys today. But we don't really know what that is, and we won't know what that is until, that August 1st reconciliation meeting.
Here's the thing, Sherry, in my opinion, I think there weren't a lot of questions from this board because they don't know what it's like, sadly, to be given a really good structure with good information, solid information, to understand what the questions they should be asking. I'm sorry to say that. I just don't see that happening. Like, for example, why are they breaking up the constitutional officers' presentations? Why are they waiting until August the 1st to bring back the sheriff's budget and the property appraiser's budget and the supervisor of elections budget? Why? I mean, they already know what the sheriff's budget is, and it's always the largest part of the budget, and it's always given, almost always given to the sheriff entirely what he needs. Why not put that in now? Why are we talking about that later? And why the supervisor of elections budget? I mean, well, until this year, you never even saw that budget grow because, well, it was conservatively managed, maybe you might say. I don't know why now it's growing so much. And the property appraiser, I don't understand all this. To me, it seems like a shell game. Maybe it's election games. It's just not, it's not good, thorough information to make good budget decisions, is what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to bring out a little bit more and echo what Misty said. The sheriff department's budget, the supervisor of elections budget, and the property appraiser's budget. The supervisor of elections budget. I just want everybody to make sure that we pay close attention to that. Nothing against no one or anybody, but it's kind of interesting how all of a sudden, and we already know, and of course, I was a commissioner, Mr. was a commissioner. Hey, I love what the sheriff does. Public safety first. Of course, the sheriff is going to get what he wants, but I think it's very, very interesting based on the way some things are going. Now we have financial eyes on the supervisor of elections office. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see in the budget presentations, you can see this current year's budget for those three and what they're potentially asking for. But the interesting thing for us is going to be, how's that going to change once the tax roll is established and we know what the millage rate is because if you guys remember right, it used to be back when you were there about anywhere from a 7 to 9% increase annually in the tax base, right? So you kind of knew there was a parameter that was going to happen. So there was, it was pretty across the board that's really all we had to work with, and we made it do. But last year it went from having a 8% increase in 2023 to, get ready, remember this, a 21.5% increase. So all of a sudden there's this huge amount of extra money. Now you see from what's presented here by the county administrator that they're projecting it to be a 10% this year. That's a big difference between 21.5% last year of what it actually was to 10% this year. So to me, I'm really going to be watching for what that tax base is set at in mid-July. And then when we come back to talk about those three budgets, the sheriff, the supervisor, and the property appraiser, are they different than what was shown, in this current balanced budget? That's probably a given, right? Especially for the sheriff. But what about those other two? So it's just going to be interesting. I don't know what that looks like, but I can guarantee the viewers, we're going to bring it to you because we're going to bring back more about the budget as we move through the summer and we look at, again, those other areas. And, I kind of get excited about this. This is the fun part of, I love looking at the budget and the numbers and trying to make sure that people are more educated in how to know what your tax dollars are going for.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, what goes up must come down.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap it up for today, right? And just remember that we'll be back. As we mentioned, the next thing is an August 1st reconciliation as the board gets through for us next week on timing to get through the other budget request. And then there's two public hearings just to let the public know. One is September the 12th at 6 p.m. board chambers, and the other one, the final one, is scheduled now for September 17th at 6 p.m. And so bringing more information back to you, and thanks for watching today. We're happy to educate you here at the Big Picture Manatee.
Yeah, thank you all. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at the Big Picture Manatee. You can find us now as a podcast and listen to us in your car at most platforms. But please tell your friends, your neighbors, your family, because we need more people who are engaged in their local government and understand it, because it affects your quality of life.
Hey, and another reminder is that we are now on multiple podcast formats like newsbreak.com and many of your favorites at the Big Picture Manatee. Let us know if there is a particular part of the budget that you want us to talk about, and we can move forward and support your requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See everybody. Thanks for listening.